Back with another software-defined talk after dark, which just means we're recording in the evening, my time. But you are kind of after dark because you're coming off a long, hard-fought shipment of something that maybe we'll even get into. So don't give us don't.
Oh, okay.
We'll just know that you've been hard at work for the last, you were saying, 18 hours straight, making sure saving the world from paying too much money, right? Is that what's been going on?
Sure. That's what I'm doing. Yeah. No, it was just trying to get a release out with a working build, with a working demo, with working documentation. It's a lot of streams that all need to come together at the same time, and
A lot of moving parts, as they say.
a lot of moving parts. But I think,
maybe the best question is, like, do you have the feeling of like, well, like, you can have two feelings at the end of a big push. It's like, we did it, we succeeded, it's exactly what we wanted. And then the other one is like, well, it's out there now, we're finished. It's like, can't change it now. Like, so, like, which feeling do you have at this moment? I feel like you have the latter. I feel like you have the, well, at least it's done.
Well, I think I opened a dozen issues and pull requests while I recorded the demo. But that's just I am a very pedantic person.
You're like you're always I think that's maybe a harsh way to say it, but you're a very good like, I don't know what you call it, proofreader, editor. Like, you find a lot of things, but like I do find and I'm just wondering, because you're good at it, I think, in all aspects, like kind of anytime. But like, I feel like upon putting something out, like saying it's finished, pushing it out, like I have, like, that's the only time like my error proofreading brain like engaged, because it's like 2 seconds before I can be like, yep, it's totally good, ready to go, publish, and like 1 second later I'm like, what are all these errors here? It's like, why why do we have all these errors? And it's like, I don't know what it is. It's like the act of like putting something else brings focus on it, like in a way that like it doesn't. I don't know. Do you have that problem? Do you find more errors after the fact? Are you?
Oh yeah.
Like, I don't know.
I mean, because there's all the things you thought you were okay with, and then you're like, publish, and then you're like, second thoughts, or things you had been okay with before, or I don't know. I mean, just little things escape your attention, and then as you start to have the daily friction with them.
There must be some psychological behavioral science behind this. Like the idea of like, maybe you're like, the human brain is more critical once we know anyone can see it. Therefore, we see more of our errors.
Yeah. I mean, think about like,
yeah, whatever. I don't, when you're just yourself, you're like, whatever. That looks good enough. That's fine, right? I don't know. You're like, it's interesting.
All those second thoughts, like, when you were taking tests in school, and then 5 minutes after the test, you're like, duh, because you're like, so many times.
Well, at least it doesn't apply to this podcast, because every time we finish at the end, I'm always like, perfect. Not a thing I would change.
I'm always like,
this is as good as we could have possibly made it. Maybe even better. That's always at the end of a good
439 episodes of podcasting nirvana.
Yeah, 439 episodes. We've never made a mistake. That's what's incredible. So we'll keep that going. All right. Well, you ready to jump into some topics? You ready to get going?
Sure.
It'll be fun. You haven't really looked at anything. You've been busy, so it'll be great. It'll be all topics will be new to you, which is good. We'll get a fresh takes from Matt Ray.
Now I'm looking to see what's going on. What do we got in here? Earnings. Yep. Did all of our predictions from last week come true?
Well, we're gonna get into it. That's the content, man. That's what the people came for.
Oh, I want to talk about Chain Guard next week. I'm going to their party.
You are? Okay, so we're gonna sell. Okay, we'll do Chain
Guard. Do you know Dustin Kirkland?
Yeah. I know him well.
He just announced he's their new VP of engineering.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, all right, good. So we'll have a full report. In fact, I was thinking like, well, maybe we'll have him on the show,
Yeah,
and he can
sure.
tell us
I'll keep an
bunch
eye out
about
for
a
him
bunch of
next week
stuff.
because I was supposed to go to like some analyst event, one of the Mosaic group, and then it kind of fell through, and they're like, "Oh, join us at the Chain Guard party," and I was like, "I guess I'll go
All
to the
right,
Chain Guard
we'll
party."
work it out. We'll work out the scheduling when, offline. We won't
Uh,
subject everyone to that.
bam, bam, paid social, yeah.
All right, you ready? Here we go. You're ready, Matt.
I'm
Pay
ready.
attention.
I could talk about all the Apple stuff too.
All right, good. Here we go. All right, Matt. Well, it was Halloween over here in the United States last night, and a holiday that is, I don't know, as I'm getting older, it's becoming a little less exciting. But I think we should answer three questions for all the listeners. We can answer them both for the United States and Australia. Three key important questions. First is, what time does Halloween start, and what time does it end? What are your official boundaries of, if I come to the Matt Ray household, when will I be able to start receiving candy, and when will the candy no longer be available
Well, see, the problem with that is I'm in Australia. They're just not they're not very much into Halloween.
at all? Like no one is?
No,
Or is
no,
it like
no. There's a
sporadically?
smattering. I mean, it's definitely it's considered kind of a among um the more uh I don't know. There's almost a thing that it's kind of a gauche American holiday, and why are we doing this? Because they just did, but they just I think we've talked about this every year that I've been here. Like, it's just not really a thing. But it's you know, commercialism's going to push it
Definitely,
forward.
right?
I mean,
Well, this brings
happy
up another question. And before we get off this, and it's like, do you like Valentine's Day? Does that exist in Australia?
not much. Yeah.
Not much. Ooh, okay,
Yeah,
good.
and
Good.
definitely no Thanksgiving.
I was gonna
But
say though, if we could export a holiday for the world, like I really
oh,
think
Halloween is an American export for sure.
I know, but I feel like it's not the best one, right? Like I feel like we should export Thanksgiving because Thanksgiving is really just about eating a lot of food, hanging out with your family, right, or and friends, and then I don't know.
No, 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 we've already exported the American holiday, Black Friday.
Yeah,
That
shopping.
shows up
Yeah,
here, and there's no
shopping. Yep.
Thanksgiving. No,
No,
there
like
is a
I feel
Black
like
Friday here and no
I
Thanksgiving.
I really believe if we could export a holiday, I think Thanksgiving would be the best because it's just, I mean, it's just
Oh,
like we're
sure.
gonna eat a lot, and then everyone can just watch, like in here we'll watch mostly American football, but it's like whatever, everyone can just play an important match of the game of their choice. So like I don't know if that's cricket in India, soccer in like most of the world. Maybe it's down there. It's American football, or not? Sorry, Aussie
Australian football,
football.
yeah.
It's like yeah, like everyone just
A little
like
bit of
let's just
rugby.
do it. Like that's a global holiday. I feel like that's just a great global holiday, especially if we just kind of ignore the origins. That's like we don't even have to like worry about it. It's just like it is literally just an event of family and friends. Like we don't know, just don't even
Mm,
worry about
that
like
sounds
why it
good
actually
because
exists.
yeah, I mean, Thanksgiving is slightly it's I feel like it's gained a little traction since I've been here. We had 0 trick-or-treaters. I left a
Mhm.
bowl full of candy out on our porch. Nobody even, took any.
Oh, okay.
Um,
So back to our original question: what time did you put the bowl out?
I don't know, 5 o'clock,
Okay,
5:30.
it's pretty early. Okay,
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
daylight savings, the sun's not going down till 7, so,
see, I was gonna go a bit straight up. I
but
was
but
gonna
but
say Halloween
I was
shouldn't start till basically like 7:30. Is
oh,
that?
wow, wow. No, no, no. So,
I
I
feel like
had to
6:30.
I went and picked up I had to take my daughter to an optometrist appointment at 4, and
Mhm.
3:30 is when schools were getting out.
Okay.
There were already kids, like elementary school kids, going door to door, and I was
At
like,
3:30?
at 3:30, at 4 o'clock,
Okay, this is what we have to get. This needs an intervention. That is way, way too early. That's crazy.
I
That's
know. I was just like, I guess they want to get it out of the way before afternoon
or
snack.
what?
I
You have
don't
to,
know.
like, get home, get the candy, have a snack, have dinner, go to bed? Like, I mean, what do they I because I think
I
you
don't
want it to
know.
be a little dark, like, kinda dusk, right? That's why I think
Yeah.
7:30, which is I agree, it's gonna depend on the part of the world you're in, so,
I mean, I saw yeah, my wife was coming home from work, like 5:30, and she said she saw trick-or-treaters downtown, or, like, people in costumes,
Mhm.
and then, My son had a basketball game at 7:20. So 7 o'clock, we're out driving
On
around
Halloween?
on
What?
Halloween.
What is
Yeah.
going on?
It's a
Yeah,
Tuesday night. It's yeah.
we need to
And
this is ridiculous. I mean, Australia just they have just wrecked this holiday. Like, if you're not gonna do it right, Australia, I mean, just don't do it at all. I
I
mean,
mean, they had and this will blow your mind. They had Halloween candy out in the grocery store next to the
mhm.
Christmas stuff.
Well, that's kinda like that here. Yeah,
Yeah,
everyone does
well,
Christmas
because there's no
all the time.
Thanksgiving to, like, buffer it, right?
Oh,
So
that's right.
the
So you're just kinda stuck with it.
yeah, like, Christmas stuff starts rolling out in October.
Well, that's kinda true. You don't have to be natural. This is another reason everybody needs Thanksgiving. You almost like Thanksgiving in some ways is just a Christmas pregame. Like,
Yeah,
everyone's just sort of,
exactly.
like, getting ready. You're
Well,
like,
we had that conversation too. It's like all your favorite foods at Christmas, you can have them at Thanksgiving too, right? All the same pies, all the same desserts,
that's true
you're
too.
gonna have
When we export the
turkey
holiday,
and
I
you're gonna
don't
have
think
ham.
no one we're not gonna require everyone to eat turkey. It's like, no, just eat something really good. Whatever you think that is,
Oh,
and you're
sure,
you're
sure.
part of the
Yeah,
club.
they're not big on turkey here either.
Okay, yeah, we should get
Yeah.
rid of that. Okay,
Well,
well, all
well,
right. Well, now, the other question I have, because you have 3 kids, even though I guess it sounds like maybe it's not a big deal in Australia. What is the age when kids either do or should stop trick or treating?
oof. There's that window, probably sixth grade or so, where they start to be too cool. But then
Uh-huh.
it comes back around where they're like, oh, I'm gonna wear a costume, but I won't go trick or treating. I'll just kind of walk around the neighborhood with my friends and our cell phones.
Right.
So I think one of my kids is in the window where they're too
Uh-huh.
cool, and the other is like, what she went walking around with her friends, and I think one of them was wearing a costume, but I don't think they went door to door.
Right, so you're
That's
kinda hitting on it. There's, like, the fun kid part, like, whatever,
yeah,
let's say that's, like, before 5th grade, right? So it's, like, kinda that maybe 1st through 5th grade where they're
yeah.
into it. Then there's the too cool stage, which is kinda unfun for everyone. It's like, well, nobody's into it, right?
Well,
Like,
that's where the
then
tricks come out, right?
yeah, but then you're right, but then there's, like, we're gonna call it, like, pre-hooligan phase, right? Where the kids can still go out and have fun and, like, not really do anything wrong. In fact, it's kinda nice they can be with their friends, and then there's sort of
And
like
then they
the
get to
late
college, and it just becomes debauchery.
yeah, then there's, like, late high school where it's hooligan night. So it's like, really, that's the age. Like, I'd say 16 to 18, if you're still, like, in high school, like, junior, senior year in US terms, or even sophomore, like, you're done. In fact, we don't want you outside at all. Those people need to stay inside to distract them. And then in college, yeah, go to college. It's super fun in college, right? You can
That's when it's not about trick or treating, it's about the Halloween party.
right, but that's even better. But then you see, that's I was thinking about this, and like, there's really nothing for us at our age. Like, I feel like at this point, like,
Oh,
we're
well,
just kind of done. Like, you can give out the candy, but like, there's nothing really
it
kind of
it
fun
was it
stuff.
was I mean, it came back around when my kids were still trick or treating in the US, walking around with them became like a neighborhood thing
Yeah,
where,
playing with
like,
the
I didn't
dad.
know this,
Yeah,
where everyone had there were a couple
wagon.
people who'd have, like, wagons, and
Yep,
they'd have a cooler, and I was
cool.
like, that was, like, next level. I hadn't done that. I didn't know about that when I was a kid, so that made it more fun.
So maybe we should start doing that even when our kids are not there. It's like, yeah, we're just taking the wagon now. We're just gonna just drag the wagon around, hang out, and just like for no reason.
Well, I'm not that far from the beach, so I see a fair amount of that
Oh,
already.
I like it now. Now that's next level.
You
So
know, wagon down to the beach. There's always like I'm always throwing distance from picnics happening and people getting drunk. So it's a good
all
time.
right. Well, we'll tune into next year's episode when we recap Halloween from Australia. We'll see if Matt Ray has made any
We'll
progress.
see if I
I mean, at
get.
least you got to work on start time. That's your assignment. Is like we can't have kids trick or treating at 3:30. That's at a minimum at 6. We got to
You know,
start.
I was in Tokyo once for Halloween, and
Oh my
they
gosh.
did it right. Like everyone, I mean, lots. I mean, it was lots of kids dressed in costumes, and kids were going door to door at stores. It
Oh,
was
that's
you
even
know
better.
they're
It's
I mean they're really into Halloween, so
like how
they did it right.
I like Halloween that borders on shoplifting. That's like now that's like a whole nother level of Halloween. That's kind of fun. Well, if anyone is listening from Japan, maybe they can chime in and tell us
Yeah,
like what time does Halloween start in
they,
Japan?
they probably celebrate Thanksgiving too.
Yeah, why not, man? Well, that's the one. Well, I'm gonna work on that. I'm gonna be like, hey, let's get Thanksgiving going as well. Because again, my key selling points is like you eat a lot of food, you hang out with your friends and family, and at least here in the US, it's like a 4-day weekend. So it's like, hey, that's good. That's the key stuff. So, all right. Well, listen, Halloween was fun, and of course, last week we had perfect predictions for cloud earnings,
Nailed
right?
them.
So I thought we would check in. So here's the official number. The ones we didn't have were for AWS. So AWS came in and was with a growth rate of 12%. So I think we were more optimistic, if I remember, Matt. I think we were saying it was
Well,
going to be
we thought that they would come in at a very predictable number, like, not high, not low, just kind of right where.
right. So we can't say the last quarter they grew at 12%. So we could say consistent. They were consistent. So maybe we can claim a victory. That basically not much happened between last quarter and this quarter. Now, I do have the official numbers. The tally I like to keep going here is that AWS is now a $92 billion annual business and it's growing 12% year over year. Azure is a $66 billion business and it is currently growing at 20%, 28% year over year. And Google Cloud, which includes G Suite and things like that, is 34 billion, and that is growing at a run rate of 22%. Now, I got a little anonymous feedback on some stuff I thought I'd throw out here. So from last week. Now, and I don't know, this will be a good one. So the first little piece of feedback I got was people were saying it's like, because Azure was talking about how great Copilot is. And I think we were like, this is great. Seems like they're doing a great job with it. Now, the word I heard was like, maybe everyone's not really paying for Copilot. And then Microsoft is offering lots of different incentives to, if you will, have companies take it on, which maybe, I don't want to get into the financial accounting because frankly, I don't understand it, but maybe the numbers there are like the 100 million, or sorry, no, it wasn't 100. It was 1 million people using it.
Yep.
Like, it's the difference between 1 million people licensing it versus using it versus like somehow it being bundled. So,
Well, do you think they're bundling licenses in as a spiff for the salespeople, or do you think they're actually so my question is, are the people who have access to it, there are 1 million of those, or there are actually 1 million users?
I think you're asking the very important questions that I do not know the answer to. But people just sort of pointed out to me, and they were like, they basically were saying like potentially we should be more skeptical of the the 1 million users. Like,
Did they roll them into the $1 billion AWS deal?
that's the question.
Exactly.
Wow, that would be next level voodoo.
That would be next level trolling, right?
Literally, AWS now has license for Copilot that's being reported on Azure earnings. That
Well,
AWS
actually, it turns out there's just 1 million AWS users of Copilot.
Copilot. Oh, that would be interesting. Okay, so I don't know. So I thought that was kind of interesting, right? The other piece of feedback we got, a little anonymous feedback was, and I first read this, I kind of thought about it for a while. It's like, I guess I'll just say it was sort of like, are we too hard on Google? Right. And because we kind of refer to them as like the third place. But someone pointed out that like, hey, that really, it's not, if you will, zero sum, right? And it is, as I kind of read off before, it's a $34 billion run rate and it's growing 22% year over year. And so the thing they put it out, and the thing that I was thinking about more was like, remember when the first, I think it was infrastructure as a service Magic Quadrant came out, and there were like 50 vendors on it, and they were just like, everybody was on it. IBM, HP, like, Cisco, like even companies we can't even remember.
Rackspace.
And if you think of it this way, it's like any one of those companies that is no longer on it would have killed for a $34 billion. It would have been like, or DigitalOcean. Like, I think we're generally like, oh, DigitalOcean is doing pretty well. Like, I don't know. I feel like I say that on the podcast, and they're like, but they're not doing nearly as well as Google Cloud. So I don't know. Maybe this is like, it's a little bit of self-reflection for ourselves. Like, I don't know. Are we too hard on Google? Because they did make it. They made it to third place, whereas so many other people tried that had equals maybe, right? They had the same kinds of resources to compete in this area, and they completely lost and gave up. So I don't know. Are we being too hard on Google? What do you think, Matt?
Well, I mean, when they publicly pronounce that, oh, we're going to be number 2 by 2023 or whatever, I mean, you can be a little hard on them because they're Google. I mean, they have every advantage in the world. But so do numbers 1 and 2. So you can go either way. I don't think there's anything wrong with pointing out the um, they for all their technical acumen, they are still not number one. Um, do they have that level of expertise that they project? Meh, meh, I don't know, but we'll just keep playing along and see how it goes. I mean, at least they're not number four.
That's right. No, I agree, and I think it's a fair question. It's like, yeah, because because they have because they have such high, such lofty goals, right? It's sort of like, I mean, we're kind of comparing them against their own goals, and so maybe that's in some ways where it comes from. Now, I will say, so I liked all that feedback. The other thing I would just say is that I think the AI comments I still kind of stand by it. I feel like because people are like, well, these other companies and these are also doing things in AI, but I just feel like Azure has definitely dominated the AI side, and I think I'm kind of feel like we should kind of end any company that says like they've been doing AI for like a long time and we should just like all take that as credit and we should give them. I'm like, I'm done with that. I'm like, I just like do not like if you're not showing me something like that's like blowing my mind, like Chat GPT or something else like that. It's like I don't care. Like I just doesn't matter to me. The fact that you were like doing some type of machine learning somewhere in your business before that, I'm like, I just think has no bearing on the market at all. I don't know. So I don't know. Is that too harsh in my like too
No, no.
that?
I mean, that's like, people who are like, oh, I was doing whatever, before it became big. It's like, but now it's big. I mean, so what? It's like, oh, um, I got a minor in artificial intelligence when I got a computer science degree. You know what? There's absolutely nothing relevant about what I learned there today. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, I was studying AI, during the AI winter, and
Right.
so it's like,
Doesn't
people are
matter,
like,
right?
yeah, it really just doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, the comment about Watson is like, yeah, we could talk about oh, IBM was shipping code that won the chess world championships. It's like doesn't matter. That wasn't applicable, the way AI is now, and so
Yeah, the whole Jeopardy thing, like Watson won Jeopardy. I agree. And it's just, I think that's just, I don't know. Then is then, now is now. I don't know. I feel like there's lots of cliches we can throw out.
yeah.
It's just like, but it's not just like old companies. I mean, I see it a lot, on the AWS side and the Google side. I'm just like, I just stop. I just like, I don't know, especially when people like Google Maps has been doing AI. It's like, no, it's not the same. It is not the same. It doesn't matter. So I just don't want to see that anymore. Everyone move on. And this is the other thing I was going to throw out too. It's like also, and maybe this will lead to some of the stuff you've been worked on. It's like, I'm so tired. Like, I have read so many earnings releases where people are like, right now the customer base is doing cost optimizations, right? Like they just keep saying that. So if that can be used in earnings releases, then I want to ask permission on behalf of everyone that's working in any type of tech company everywhere. And you have any type of quarterly business review, manage a monthly business review, any type of review at all. That then if your company said that, then in your review you can say, well, turns out it was just a lot of optimizations this quarter. And that's why whatever it was that you didn't do or what didn't meet expectations, everyone should be able to use that excuse. Because I'll tell you this, I've seen this used by so many different CEOs. And I know for a fact, if you walked into that room and be like, well, sorry, executive person, we didn't meet the goal because the thing that we were trying to do, the customers were doing optimizations. That would not be met with like, oh, I totally understand. No problem, Brandon. Keep up the good work. That would be responded with, I think, some very, very poignant comments about how you should be doing more, right? So that's why I just hate that. So I hate that. So if we're going to use them at the executive level, it feels like everyone gets to use it. And if no one can use it, I get it. Then we all have to just like, take our feedback, if you will, from our, in this case, investors, or your management. You just have to own it. I don't know. Matt, thoughts on that?
I'm with you. I mean, what's the problem that your customers are, saving a little money, getting a little more optimized? Like you can't really complain about it. They're still your customers. Yeah.
Right. And that's the same thing. And it doesn't change anything. Now, but this brings us to our to the part of the episode that we're going to edit out because Matt had to walk away for 1 second. So I will just talk. You're still on mute. You back?
Yes, the dog was attacking the door.
All right. All right. All right. Okay. Here, I'm gonna pick it up and then and make it an easy edit for myself. So cost optimization. So Matt, this brings us to the hard work you've been doing this week. So let's. I want to first basically commend you on getting this done, but maybe you can just explain the news.
It's not me. It's
well, I know. I was gonna say that's the hard thing. Maybe you can explain what have you been working on and what happened, today, I guess. As what did you launch?
So OpenCost has a new feature set that we've launched. So KubeCost, my employer, has contributed. They've contributed access to cloud billing. So before, like OpenCost was working just reading like APIs for pricing, but now they've open sourced the billing parsing. Go in and reading your cost and usage reports and your historical billing from your cloud provider and displaying that, which means not only do we show your Kubernetes costs, but now we're actually showing you, what's inside your bill and starting to tie them into Kubernetes. So you can see like, oh, I've got S3 or networking or, BigQuery or, whatever it might be that may or may not be relevant to your Kubernetes deployment. So we're kind of getting into, not just Kubernetes costs.
So it's kind of like generalized billing.
Yes. Generalized cloud billing.
And this is all part of the OpenCost project, which is under, and refresh everyone. So it's like, that's under.
Yeah. So right? My day job is, I'm the community manager for OpenCost, which is a CNCF project that is Kubernetes and cloud cost price monitoring. So we tell you how much everything costs inside your Kubernetes cluster. Well, now we're parsing your actual bills and trying to bring that back into Kubernetes or not, so you can just see like, hey, here's what my cloud bill looks like. Here's how much is being spent by a particular application. That's kind of what we do.
Now, what's which bills do you can OpenCost parse through? I guess is it like because
AWS, Azure, GCP. Yeah.
Okay. So any one of those I can pull up, throw it in OpenCost, and then I was just watching a demo. You can show
my demo.
Lots of pretty graphs, right? Oh, Matt, this is I didn't prep you for this question, but like
no,
I hope. Can you export to CSV? I mean,
absolutely. That's in the demo, Brandon. I made
obviously you can tell
that's in the demo for you.
I just want to double check, because that's
I mean the original script said, and Brandon, this one's for you. Click.
You know how I love my export CSV. So that's available now. Put a link in here so everyone can just go download, check it out, use it, right? It's
it's completely open source and Apache license. So it's well, we're not done announcing stuff. So now what was,
because you kind of alluded to like more is coming, like the monitoring, like what was like, well, I didn't quite understand that. What else? I don't want to like say.
Well, I mean, it's
unless were there monitoring?
This is
like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously the first feature. Having access to the bill now means, well, you can look around and see what other people do with that billing data, right? Mm-hmm. So we can start like, tying, making sure everything ties back into Kubernetes, or start showing other views or other queries against that data. Because right now it's pretty raw. I mean, it's a beta feature, but we're really involved in the FinOps open cost and usage specification. Focus. Probably working on that. Tying that into billing and visualization. So maybe you can look at your focus bills as they start to standardize that, or I mean, it's no secret. I'm also talking to people about carbon costs and other things. So we're going to have a busy week next week at KubeCon.
All right. So KubeCon next week, Matt Ray is going to be in this. It's not a booth. I always forget what it is. What is it called?
Yes, I'm in the project pavilion. So all of the CNCF projects who want one can have a kiosk. I was about to say booth. A kiosk, which it's 2 chairs and a monitor, and I'll be there. So if you're coming to KubeCon, go to the open cost kiosk. 95% of the time I will be there.
It would be so much better if it was 2 turntables and a microphone. That
It
rather
would
than
be.
that would be awesome. You just, in front of the DJ booth
Yeah.
doing some stuff.
I'm sure everyone would love, 18 hours of that.
That would be fantastic. Well, congratulations. Everyone visit Matt Ray. Everyone learn about open cost. And then, of course, like whatever you do, go there and ask Matt Ray like for lots of esoteric features that are like really impossible to add. They're like, what about this other random thing? Because that's what everyone likes to hear when they're in their kiosks.
That's the beauty of GitHub is you can put them all in there.
All right. Well, the other thing that I ran across this week that I wanted to talk about with you, because you have so much history with Chef and things like that, was I guess the team over at Oxide. Yeah. They shipped their new computer. So it looks like, I don't know. Yep. It looks awesome. I don't know.
Great. I'm excited. I'm a big fan of Oxide. So
it does.
I'm excited for them.
It does. It looks like, and it's been like in the work for many years. So it's like, it looks awesome. I mean, it has like all types of cool chip stuff that I will not bore you with, nor do.
Well, it's not the chip stuff that's exciting. I mean, it is exciting
the way they kind of brought it all together.
The packaging,
it's pretty cool.
That they've chosen some relatively high end components, and they kind of pointedly said there's no like home lab version of this. They're shipping some big iron, AMD high end chipsets, and their own top of rack switches, but the fabric of everything is open source. That's what's interesting is, given their experience working on, public clouds, a lot of folks over there were at Joyent, who used to be in the Magic Quadrant, and they were at Joyent, they were at Sun, and they've dealt with a lot of the problems of running hardware in data centers, and so they were like, hey, if we were doing this from scratch, what would make it as a data center provider, what would be the optimum experience? And that's what they were going for. Is full transparency, full access to everything, and as much open source as possible. Because when it comes time to debug some backplane or something, last thing you want is a closed bit of code that you have to debug.
Yeah, and they're really clear about it. And as far as like on the Oxide stuff, it's like all the software is open source, and the way they make money, it's very simple to understand, is you must buy their computer. There's no open source.
Like I said, there's no home lab version, right?
Yeah, no, and it's just also too. But what I thought was interesting though is they have a podcast. I think this one was Oxide and Friends.
Yeah,
and they had your old one of your old bosses, Adam Jacob, on, and of course Adam's been on here with his new company Systems Initiative. Yep. And if you liked, if you will, a wide-ranging discussion of open source that gets into a lot of the weeds, you should definitely listen to the episode, because I guess Brian Cantrell, he's one of the Oxide founders, and I forget the other. There's another Adam whose name I just forgot his last name, but he's on there. So they all have like deep experience with the open source, and so they really got into the weeds of some of these various models. And so I wanted to talk about one specific model. So, Adam Jacob's been on the show, and I think he's sort of, if you will, to me, he's sort of the Pied Piper of, this free software product, open source model. And so if you want to hear the whole podcast, you should go listen to it. But for the purposes of our discussion, I'm just putting to the side Open Core and all the other, business models, because Adam spent a lot of time in this kind of talking specifically about this idea of around, the free software product, but I'm going to call it paired with the paid distribution, right? Mm-hmm. And he's sort of like, I think in his mind, like this is the way forward, right? Is that you basically build all the software free, but the distribution is proprietary, right? And so the example that he kind of talks about, of course, is, I'm going to call it Red Hat before like Red Hat, where they were essentially, if you will, they were essentially, if you will, I guess they would say they were okay with the rebundlers, right? They sort of like, the CentOS, they kind of lived with it, right? They were sort of like, okay, we have our Red Hat product, right? And then even if they didn't like it, there was a period of time they allowed people to rebundle it and if you will
They
take
were more tolerant. Yes.
right, they were, if you will, they were upstream from that, right? So let's just sort of like leave it at that because I don't want to rehash the Red Hat stuff. Like we've been through that a million times. And so, but Adam sort of like really proposed that like this is the way forward, right? And his whole
Yeah.
point was just essentially, hey, it's okay to charge for the distribution, right? That's what people should want. And I think, he didn't get into it here, but I think what he is saying is that if you're going to do it this way, you should always allow downstream rebundlers. You should just live with that. Like you shouldn't prevent that. You should be able to build a company that, and of course this was all in, if you will, in context of like Hashi, right? Like, we don't have to rehash that as well as either. And I don't know. So I was just like really kind of like, kind of like letting it like wash over me and being like, okay,
yeah.
like would this, and I know Chef kind of went through this process. I think this is like one of the last.
The last 2 years, before the acquisition, Chef went full open source.
Right.
Everything, soup to nuts was open source. And, the difference was if you wanted to run Chef, you had to have a license. You could run a downstream derivative distribution, which they worked to build. But if there would be no confusion that if you were running Chef, it must be a licensed product.
Must be licensed
Just
product.
like if you're running Red Hat Linux, it must be a.
All right, so let's stop here. This is the part I wanted to get your take on because you actually lived literally this whole experience. So when you're doing this, like when and I don't even know what was the Chef? Did it have a name? If you will, the open source.
The open distro is called Sync, CINC. It's Sync is not Chef.
Okay, now did Chef where did that
Chef's kickstarted Sync?
Okay, all right, and then this is where I was going to ask this: like, how much work? Because there's the whole idea of like you could literally just be like, here's the Git repository, like all the code's there, but like no one, you know what I mean? Like batteries not included, no instructions, right? Or you kind of go to the level of like, step by step, here's how you build it. So when you were doing this part, like how much did you, if you will, bootstrap that? Like, did you give?
They did a lot of bootstrapping. They did a lot of bootstrapping. It's probably still up on GitHub. They documented, how the community would be structured, how, what expectations community people should have from the upstream. Like, hey, if you submit this, you're going to get this. And then really worked with the downstream on clearing trademarks, right? Removing Chef from their builds. So there would never be any question, like when somebody shows up asking questions in Chef support, what they were running. And, spoiler alert, it worked really well. They got a good return on their Chef relicensing. The grumbling was, I mean, that's literally a freeloader, right? If you're saying like, I want to use Chef, but I don't want to pay for Chef, well, then use Sync, and you're like, you don't have an excuse not to use Sync. And so,
because that's the part I want to get to. So this is the part I was kind of wondering, almost like as I was just listening to the panel, I want to ask Adam, and really I'm using you as a proxy. It's like,
I'm here.
The responsibility though is sort of like, there's some bar you have to get synced to. In this case, you have to be like, okay, like you got all the source code up, you booted up the community, you have the kind of like, if you will, some type of automated or semi-automated build.
Automated builds, and they had they built out like libraries to assist with with trademark replacement.
This is okay. Now was
like all the scaffolding that like CentOS and Rocky and Alma have, like Chef kickstarted that for.
Okay, so my question then on this is like, was there a point though where you're like, okay, it's like, I don't know, almost like a kid riding a bike. It's like, we're gonna get it all going for you.
Yeah.
And then like we're letting it go. And
that's where they are now, right? I'm pretty sure the current state of Chef is they I think they do have a community manager, I think, but I think most of the downstream stuff is fairly self-sufficient, and they're not doing like new development really. They're just relabeling builds and keeping those going. So it's very much a open distro of Chef. And nobody ever came for the big reporting dashboard and all that stuff. It was just the Chef client and the Chef server. those live on as sync client, sync server. Inspec lives on as sync. I don't know, investigator. It has some name, but so those three products all lived on. Habitat, it was called Biome, and I don't know if that's still kicking around, but um, the definitely like Chef Client, Chef Server, and Inspec are still running, with
Mhm.
their downstream distros, and people use them. There's I lurk in those channels because I did a bunch of work on those back in the day.
Right.
All the stuff that like Chef wouldn't support, like Raspberry Pis and stuff. I was doing all that in sync. Uh, so
So
yeah,
what's the
it's
so at this point though, like if I want to make a contract, if I have some new feature that I want in and I want to
yeah.
basically do,
I don't. I mean, I
pull
can't
request,
speak to the state of it today,
like how
but
would it have worked at the time you're there? Like if I could I
yeah,
would
yeah,
I
yeah. So
create this.
they had
Mhm.
governance documented. They had a you know a regular meeting of community members with chef people, and
Mhm.
talked about roadmap. The roadmap all went online. Everything happening in Chef went online. I mean, they stopped having like private. Everything got super transparent.
Mhm.
And before the open sourcing, of course, they had to sanitize years and years of Git history. um but yeah,
But
everything
so if I
got.
just made a change, if I said, "Hey, I've got this great idea and I want to like, if you will, send in my code, do a pull request," can I do would I do it to Chef, the repository, or would I do
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah, because they're still the
Okay.
upstream. They're just
Okay.
saying, this is the code base. We'll work on this in public, and if you show up, we'll work on this in good faith. I mean, the problem is, I don't really recall any PR showing up that were conflicting as much as like bad ideas.
Right.
Um, there weren't like PRs were
No,
like
I mean, there's the normal process of like, hey, like
yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah.
bad ideas and for every kind of project. But like, so Chef was like reviewing them. I mean, it's open. I could
Yeah, and
see
then it would
them.
go into
It's
Chef, and
normal
then
process.
downstream, when
Yeah.
Chef would say, "Here's release 18," Sync would say, "Here's Sync 18," like
Huh?
12 hours later. So it was very much the Red Hat CentOS model,
Right.
with a lot more bootstrapping from Chef to kickstart Sync. And what happened with the relicensing is, the downstream, if you will, freeloaders, the companies that were using Chef and reselling it to their customers and their support. Well, they were given the choice. You can switch to Sync, or you can get a license, and
Mhm.
they bought licenses.
Right. So that makes sense. So I don't know. I think in some ways that kind of like begs the question. Then it's like, well, like, is that if that's sort of, I mean, that's sort of the incentive Chef would want. Chef, the company, would want you to buy a license, of course, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know. So I guess it's just kind of back to like, what is the, I guess that's the part I kind of came back to is like, well, if the goal really is you want everyone to buy the license here, right? And most corporations, I think, are going to want the license,
Yep.
right? And it's like, well, then who's like in this case, we'll use Sync. Like, who is
Who's
Sync
using
serving?
Sync?
Like,
Yeah.
who is that serving? Like, have you sort of just, if you will, it's like, I guess it's like almost like if I don't really have free access to the real thing, even though it's open source, like what do I really have? Like, what do I,
who's gonna run Open Tofu, right? It's gonna be like the open source hippies. Yeah.
yeah, the
Just
Matt Ray
not
thing,
actually that big an audience, but
right?
they're definitely some of us. And and it's going to be the people who are like, the cost of that license is not worth it to me. And sometimes you have integrators, whoever, like, I'm willing to throw bodies at this problem because it's cheaper than buying licenses. So that was an incentive for Chef not to charge too much. But I think in the podcast I was like, we should charge more. We should have charged more. There's also the whole like, it's a great podcast, but a very very divergent track about like how VC messes up everything. But they're going to do what they're going to do, and everyone understands that. And I don't think I understood it. I didn't know that there was this 10-year cliff coming, that the party was ending. But heads up, if you're at a VC backed company and you're approaching 10 years, the party's ending.
Yeah, and so just to clarify that, it's like what happens is the fund ends after 10 years, and they want to do something with everything in there. They either want to write it off and take it as a tax loss. They want to sell it so they can return the money to investors, or they just don't want it to sit out there for a long time. So that's kind of the, if you will, a 10-year cliff. So I don't know. So I guess I just kind of look back on it because Adam is just like, like I don't know, it's almost like religion to him, right? Like I just, at least it comes through that way. Like he feel like, I feel like if you're talking, it's like, this is the way. There's only one way.
Well, but the funny thing is, it's like, because of this externality of VC backed stuff, we're gonna see nothing. I bet we're gonna see, for every 100 open source companies, I think 95 of them are gonna do the rug pull.
Mhm.
I mean, I think you're gonna see, like, there will be some that there are very few examples of the Red Hat model, because like it's not attractive to VC. Support is like just toxic to VC. Nobody wants a support driven business, and so if you're going to take the big multiples to grow your company, I mean, if you're going to take a bunch of money to grow a company fast, you're going to end up going down a path. I mean, the pessimist in me thinks you're going to be going down a path that does not allow you to build a long-term sustainable company. I think there's going to be a rug pull.
Well, I think that's for sure. And I think that's kind of what a lot of that conversation went. So it's like, why is it? And I think, the part I kind of was, because I was sort of like leaving the conversation thinking like, well, Adam's answer to this is, again, I'm using his words here, the free software product licensing model. That's clearly what he believes.
Yeah.
In. And it's like, and so, and I think because on the podcast, they kind of challenge him a little bit and say like, well, like, why doesn't anyone do it? And he has obviously been asked that question many times. He has a whole set of ways to answer. So I encourage you to listen to it. But like, I think his point is just sort of like, there's a lack of willingness of people to try to actually do it. But I do like, I mean, to me, I kind of flip it around. I'm like, well, like if this was the answer, there's so many companies. It's like, and there's so many people willing to try stuff. It's like, like, I don't know. Like, I think it was,
but the VC externality is like, you can make a short-term cash grab.
Right. I mean, I think in the case of like Chef's a good example. Chef's was out there for a long period of time and was at the end of a fund, right? But I think at the beginning, like say, if you will, the company's being founded now, like let's just take Adam as like, okay, if this is the way to build the next quote unquote Red Hat or something equivalent to it, I think the VCs will be like, fine, yeah, like do it. Like we want to have a major, big, huge $billion outcome. This is the way to do it. Let's do it. And I think the question, I think they kind of come back to, it's like, well, there just isn't a lot of evidence, right? And I think that's the whole.
Yeah.
And I know Adam would be like, it's just, Adam would say, because he says on that podcast many times, it's like people are just unwilling to do it. They just don't believe in it. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm still not convinced. I'm still like, I think people will try a lot of crazy stuff. But
you only get what you don't get the A/B test with your company.
Right. Well, I mean, this system initiative is the B test, right? Because I'm now interested in it because like clearly like he has all the history of Chef, all the scars, right, for good or for bad. And so like I'm really interested to see because I don't know exactly, because I know they were in the process of open sourcing it.
Oh yeah, they've gone down the open source path. I mean, I'm lurking over in their Discord, and like they're charging down the path. They're getting open source commits. They're getting features from the community, and I don't know how viable. I don't think there's like a downstream distro yet. Maybe there doesn't need to be, but
well, no, there I would say no. I think that's like a prerequisite to like being the fraud. Well, I guess at least supporting it, right? Like having the enough infrastructure for there to be some type of downstream distro would seem like kind of a prerequisite to this, right?
I think,
and it's like, you're just kind of like, you're really just a licensed product at that point.
Well, I think like, I mean, it depends on how you look at it. The system initiative as a product, I think there are parts of the ecosystem that they will commercially provide that will not be open source, right? So like, going back to the comparison would be like with InSpec, the security scanning tool, right? The tool was completely open source and transparent, but like they didn't give away all the sys benchmarks. You know, all the things that you're going to be scanning for. They gave away some starter ones, but they kept, you know, the ones that were up to date and you know, all of the like IP around how to use this product, that was, you know, that was kept behind.
Mhm.
And it wasn't, I mean, you know, it's code, but it's not the project, you know, it's not the, you know, the product. You could write your own is the whole point. Like you could go and write from scratch a full competitor. So I think the System Initiative, you could run a full, you know, SaaS version of it yourself, but you're not going to have, you know, the content, you know, the curated content that they're going to have, which is kind of like, you know, Android, right? Sure, you can roll your own Android phone. Good luck with your own Android marketplace. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what do you think about, so you know, as we kind of wrap this up, we can kind of do a couple things. Like one, if HashiCorp had done this, right? They said, hey, this is the way we want to go, right? Do you think they would have made more money, less money, or the same? Like if we were like if we were like forecast this going forward.
And from which point in time?
Well, I guess this last time, I guess this last
Yeah, I
decision,
mean, if they
right?
if instead of doing the full rug pull that they did, a very hard rug pull, you know, where they're like, you
Right.
know, now they're fighting with the Linux Foundation.
They're fighting with everyone at this point.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, they're gonna find themselves fighting with their customers, because, you know, there've already been some high profile folks who have come out and said, you know, "Oh, this Open Tofu thing, you know, we're getting into it. We're gonna be behind it." I think they probably could have, I think short term, they're gonna probably be okay, but I think long term, they're gonna, you know, hemorrhage more than they would have if they'd done a more gradual transition, or I don't know. I don't I don't
I
know
feel like
what
they
kind
have
of
that
advice
for a
about
reason.
how to do a rug pull, right?
Yeah. Well, because I think we should look at Red Hat too, the other one, even though I said we shouldn't talk about Red Hat because we've been on many times. But like I feel like the Red Hat change, I don't know what we're
I
calling
don't think
that.
the Red Hat change is
Um,
that bad.
I was
You
gonna
know,
say I don't think it's that bad, but I don't think it's gonna net them out much more revenue. You know what I mean? It's
no, and I think, I mean, I
like I think they should have just been like they had it pretty well. They should have been like, listen, I would say like if you were to be totally almost like Red Hat therapy would be like, guys, you're always going to be mad. It's almost like, listen, you're
you're
always going
always
to be mad
going to
at
be
your
mad.
parents. You're always going to be angry at these people using CentOS. And I know deep
Exactly.
down you want to call them names, freeloaders, and many other things you want to say that are probably not words for play company. But in the end, it's going to be okay because they weren't really ever going to pay you. So they're
Exactly.
in like just be okay with it, right? It's like, and it is the whole thing about like it's still you're still going to make a lot of money. You're not losing any money from them, or it's not very significant. And don't worry about it, right? I think that was the therapy Red Hat needed, but you could tell there was just a lot of like you could see the anger, like these
Well,
freeloaders.
yeah,
I
I
hate
mean,
these
somebody,
people.
you know,
And it's like,
that
no,
that
no, no, you know, it's okay. It's okay.
it's
Like you
always
just,
been there. You know,
you know,
there've always been people who have
you
been
should have
mad
just
about
given them better benefits. Be like, you know what, everyone's getting here a little more free therapy. You get in there and you get your anger out. But it's like because that part I don't think is going to like net out any. It's going to be so insignificant. Whereas the Hashy thing, I'm like, I don't know. Like I kind of agree with you. It's like the Open Tofu, or no, it's just tofu, right? I would say
No, I
whatever.
think it's Open Tofu.
That group is very motivated. That group is like, I feel
Oh,
like
yeah.
that is a very motivated group to be like, we're going to be here until we prove everybody wrong. Not even prove wrong, till we take back, if you will, what was ours. So, but I do think so. I guess we can leave this with sort of like, obviously we'll watch Red Hat. The Hashy thing is super interesting, and then I guess by definition, Adam's company Systems Initiative. Now that's kind of complicated because they have a lot of like what ifs. It's like, did they build the right product? I don't know. Like, you know, that
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
gonna have to play out. And then two, did they adopt the right licensing model? I don't know. We're gonna
I
have to
mean,
see. Right?
I'm
Like,
with Adam. It's like I don't think it's, you know, open source is, I mean, which kind of comes back to the Oxide model. It's like, you know, Oxide's not an open source company. They're here to sell some hardware. And I think, you
well,
know,
Oxide's the most pure. Like, I love. Like, I can't get enough. Like, I don't know. Again, it's back to like they have a lot of other. Like we were talking about this in Slack. It's like it's hard to build a computer company. It's hard to get like stuff in the data centers. Like they have a whole set of challenges that I think have nothing to do with open source software. It's just like I don't know.
well,
But
but so does SI though. I mean,
I agree. But like,
their
but I
initiative
think
is like, did they
Oxide.
build the right product? You
Yep.
know, does anybody even care to use it? And I think the open sourceness becomes like just when you're making a pro and cons column, it's a pro, just like it would be with oxide. You'd be like, well, the good thing is, I guess, maintenance of this is going to be a lot easier, and but there's probably not a lot of people thinking like, that's it, I'm going to go make my own SI platform.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just like the oxide one because it's clear. It's like if they answer these other questions and people buy their computers, they're going to make tons of money. If not, it's just not going to work, right? It's just simple. It's like there's nothing complicated about it. And I guess maybe we should leave it here. It's sort of like, I don't know, what are we? The people contemplating open source licensing changes. I hope someone of some size, because this is like the next big one. It would be interesting if someone went this route, right? Kind of like Chef did it, but like if someone's like, no. We are announcing, call it the free software product licensing model, right? The distribution, you must pay for it as licensed software, and we're going to boot up, the open source community next to it. And that's what we're doing going forward. And it would be really interesting if someone tried it, because I think it would be just a great test case for everyone. And then we can see, like, does it make money? Is the community, reasonably happy with that? And then, of course, are the venture capitalists actually happy with that? So we'll see. So I don't know who it is, but I don't know. It'll take someone. I think it would be very hard in the boardroom. I think it will take a founder. I think it requires like a founder with like some reasonable, significant equity left in their company to be like, no, we're doing this. Because other than that, I don't know who else can actually pull it off. So, that's your project. When you're out there at the CNCF, and like, because there's going to be, I'm sure, some hallway talk about who's the next company that's going to. There's already
who's the next rug pull.
I've seen several. If you go to the Software Defined Talk Slack, there's like, I'm not going to report any of it because I have no idea if any of it's true. There's some speculation that it's coming. So I don't know. I want to see if someone
always coming.
Yeah, it's always coming. All right, now the other thing I want to talk to you about, Matt Ray, is talk about people that have invented a good business model. And I don't really so much have like commentary on this, as I just think it's incredible because we talk about the defaults all the time on this show. So the reports came out that Google reportedly pays $18 billion. I did not say that wrong. $18 billion a year to Apple to be the default search engine of Safari. And just to add on to that, Google paid a whopping $26.3 billion in 2021 to be the default search engine everywhere. So I guess that's like Firefox. I don't know. I guess it's like all the browsers. Right. So to me, I'm like, is this like the greatest, business model of all time? Like if you're on the other end, you think about Apple, it's like someone shows up with a check for 18 billion, or you can go to another search engine that people will like less, or at least use less, or you could build your own.
They might, and most of them will just keep using Google.
Yeah, most of them will probably switch back in the thing. So it's like, I was like, of course, like there is no other answer. Like, so when people like, I always think back to these questions, it's like, oh, why does Apple do this? I'm like, the only possible answer to the question is yes. Like, I don't think there's anything else.
It's, Microsoft's going to show up with, $1 billion for Bing, $2 billion for Bing. It's not like DuckDuckGo's got $1 billion to hand out. So yeah, the only other potential is going to be Microsoft. And, I'm sure, apologies to our friends at Bing, but, it's probably fine.
Well, I guess this is maybe a next question. Like, do we have a problem with this? Because there's obviously a lot of like lawsuits going around here. And it's like,
well,
to me, it's like, it is one of these things. Like, I have a hard time getting worked up.
I don't have a problem with Apple taking the money.
Right.
I have a problem with, monopolies, and enhancing their positions. That's because that's all this is. It's like they put an $18 billion moat around them, right? Like, nobody can go to Apple and get into the search space, because nobody else has $18 billion to give. So having a new startup in the search space is going to be monumentally hard to get any traction. Because you'll never be a default.
Yeah, so I guess you're kind of making the case there. It's like, well, but I just don't know. It's like,
as an antitrust, I'm totally against it.
But it's like, if you're like DuckDuckGo, like, what is DuckDuckGo going to do? Like,
you're going to testify in congressional hearings, and
But are
sit
we
on
gonna
your
switch
hands.
to
Yeah.
DuckDuckGo? Are any of us gonna like really do it? I mean,
I've
that's just part
used it. It's fine. You don't really
it's
notice
fine
it,
too, but
but
I
but
just
what ends up happening is like you're already using Gmail, you're
yeah,
already using,
email,
other stuff,
and our
and you
Gmail.
just kind of end up back in Google, and you didn't really notice when it happened, but you know, all of a sudden, your Chrome is defaulted back to Google. How did this happen? Of course it happened.
All right. Well, the other nugget that came out because like The Verge is all over this, so like reading all the emails, and so one of the emails that says, I guess it's from one of the internal emails sent by one of the VP of Android platform partnerships, and the quote is, "quote Chrome exists to serve Google search," end quote. And I was like, I just felt like, yeah, of course. Like I don't know, I didn't think this was news, but people
Nobody
seem
wants to hear it said out loud, but it's true.
But like, did you ever think otherwise? We're ever like, man, it's really great. They're so nice to make a web browser for us all. Like, of course it was made for Google. Like,
Well,
I don't know.
back in the don't be evil days of Google, people thought like, no, they're just trying to make everything better for everyone. But really, like, you know, I mean, it's kind of like the whole open source. Like everybody has an angle in open source. You know,
Yeah.
there are definitely some altruistically bent folks who are like, hey, I want there to be better things out there in the world, and if we all get rich, that's a nice side effect, but it's not required. But at Google, it's required.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just one of those things. I guess I feel like maybe maybe it's just more me coming to grips with my own opinions here. It's like I see a lot of people worked up over a lot of this, but I'm just like this one. I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. Seems fine. Like I feel like the only way this stuff changes eventually, and maybe you can see a little glimmer of it these days, is that overall search itself will just become less valuable because there'd be other ways to do stuff. Like that's to me the only end to this. There isn't going to be like I don't know. I don't think
But
there's
then who
this.
can afford to pay for the alternate AI things? Other
True.
FANG companies
Well,
with
that
billions and
Anthropic
billions.
isn't going to fund itself. Everyone, AWS and Google just keep giving Anthropic more money, which in itself has become its own like weird little proxy war. All right. Well, this was I was going to ask you because you're the man with a million ad blockers. So there are some legitimate attempts here. I don't know. Legitimate maybe even seems the wrong words. There are some attempts, let's say, is to move away from advertising-based social media to, if you will, you just pay for a subscription. So Facebook and Instagram have launched an ad-free subscription in Europe. And
Yeah, yeah.
then I don't know. I kind of swore we never talk about Elon Musk again, but we'll just mention this once that they're talking about like there'd be a paid version of, I guess, X, right? So that wouldn't have any ads. And it's like, I don't know. Like again, one of these things. Well, I guess I was going to contrast it with like YouTube Premium. I know you're sort of on team ad blocker there, but like I think YouTube Premium, good product. And I think if you actually like YouTube and you don't want to see the ads, I think it's reasonable. I think it's reasonable to pay the subscription, but it is very similar to other like subscription services that people are used to, like Disney Plus and stuff like that. Like the idea of paying for social media is kind of weird to me, right? I don't know, but I just was wondering, it's like maybe that's just like an old school way of thinking. Like, what is you? Because you do not like ads in your social media, so are you going to consider paying for any of this,
I mean,
or is it all bad?
that's a good question because obviously if I don't feel compelled to watch ads, if that's your business model, I'm sorry, but I just, I agree, there should be a way to make me pay for it, but I don't see how me watching ads gets any value.
What would you like? Would you actually pay
So yeah,
for?
I mean, I pay for Spotify.
Right, but would you go so far as to pay for either Facebook or X,
Well,
aka
I'm
Twitter?
I'm mostly done with both of them.
Right. I think we would
But so here I am. I'm on I'm on Blue Sky and Mastodon, and I assume they're ad based. I mean, Mastodon's
No,
kind
they're
of
not.
not,
Mastodon's just free,
but
right?
I mean, I assume Blue Sky will be at some point. Maybe they're
I
ads and
think
I
Blue
just don't
Sky
see
is
them. I
just
don't
like
know.
I think Blue Skies are done. I actually think I know you're not a fan, but I actually think, and this is maybe an unpopular opinion, I think Threads is actually pretty good. I've actually used. I've been on it. I'm like, yeah, it seems like it really does seem like maybe just sort of Twitter before the chaos. And so it's like I guess it's like if you like Twitter pre-chaos, it's kind of replicated that same experience. And so it seems like that'll be like to me the thing that like hangs on to me will be Threads. But I don't know, I don't
Yeah.
whether or not that's a successful business, I don't know.
It's it's not my problem to sort out their business models. If they think that they're going to get me to pay, $15 a month for it, I don't care enough.
Yeah,
And
it's not
I
enough
mean,
value.
well, and that's what's funny is the pessimist in me says, well, Twitter's doing it because they call themselves X and they have no business model and they're hemorrhaging money. And maybe if they throw this at the wall, it'll stick, but it won't. And then, Meta's doing it for European antitrust reasons.
Yeah.
They're
So
like,
maybe
oh no, you can always pay not to do
yeah.
ads.
It's a feature that exists only to just say it exists and no one is actually expected to use it. And so I
Yeah.
think maybe the one to watch then would a little bit because I think YouTube, I think they've obviously
I mean, I would agree. When some of the recent ad blocking stuff going down, I was like, do I use YouTube enough where I'd feel like paying for it? I was like, maybe, I mean, and would I pay some sort of like Google fee to be exempt from ads? Probably not as much as they would value. I mean, like I'd probably pay $5 a month for Google stuff. I mean, I've been using Gmail for 20 years. I've been using other stuff. I've been using Android. But this whole time I've been, aggressively fighting with the stuff that hosts all my content.
It's true. And that's true. I think I'm mostly like, I'm okay. Well, it's also like, I'm sure there's an email sent somewhere inside Google where they're like, Gmail exists only to serve Google. It's like, yep, I know. I got it. I'm still okay with it. So, I mean, don't have to do it. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting. I think, the one I'm going to watch then is TikTok. I guess TikTok's like a good hybrid one, right? Because it is the short-term video and it's like, you can waste a lot of time on it. And the ads are pretty, I think they're not that intrusive. I guess it depends on who you are. So it'd be interesting if they roll out like a paid offering because that's sort of like a good hybrid because it has some social aspects, but it also has like a lot of video. So that would be like a more natural subscription. But like, yeah, I don't know. It's hard. It's almost like, would you pay to get on Reddit? Would you pay to get on Facebook? It's like, no, I just like, in fact, if anything, it would be like, oh, this is a reason for me not to be on this thing. The fact that I have to like waste money on it. So, okay. So we'll watch it there. All right. Well, Matt, a couple other quick things. I just wanted to mention this because Matt Levine wrote about SolarWinds as security fraud, which I think was just fantastic. So if you didn't see the news, I guess the SEC is suing SolarWinds for misleading investors. And there are just some great quotes about passwords inside. I guess, I know there are several accounts that just basically publish emails that have been found in court documents, but there's some gems about like some SolarWinds security engineers basically just discussing how little security SolarWinds has. So it's just, I just thought it was funny to read. And then I liked Matt Levine's take on like, bad passwords are security fraud. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, if you will, the financial analysis / meets IT, go read it all. It was just kind of a fun read. And then finally, of course, we're the #1 Apple podcast in the world. Everyone comes here to figure out what's going on with Apple.
You're welcome.
So, Matt, what was your main takeaway from the Apple Scary event that took place here on Monday?
It was about what I expected, right? The M3 is 30% faster than the M2, which makes it.
I think it was M1, right? Because they kept trying to compare it to the M1, which made sense, right? Always pick.
Okay.
I think it's 20% faster than the M2, and then it's like whatever that works out.
It was like 50% than the M1.
The M1.
Yeah,
also, close watchers, Apple absolutely the king of graphs with no labels. I mean, you're just like, it doesn't get any better than this. You just got lines with no units,
everything up and to the right.
You're just like a percentage of a percentage of a percentage. It's like, it's fantastic. I showed my 7th grader. I was like, hey, do you see anything wrong? He's like, oh man, I would get in so much trouble if I handed this in. I'm like, exactly. When you have a graph, you must label the axis and show units. Otherwise, it's just lines. But I thought that was very funny. They do it every time now. So many people pointed it out. Are you getting in that where you move to go get a new M3?
No. I looked at their 14-inch Pro. And I was a little confused by some of the specs. I mean, still offering an 8
because there's two. There's kind of like the new Pro, which is really like the old MacBook 13 Pro, which is like the slow Pro. And then there's the Pro. if you will. So that's why you have to kind of figure out what you want. What do you think about the RAM? 3 slots of RAM. Now we all have to do division by 3. That's throwing me off. Like, you know, I see 18 gigs of RAM. I'm like, what happened here? The hardware engineer go wrong? Like, is what, you know,
well, I mean, some of the new AMD stuff does 48 gigs, which is a weird number.
Yeah. So we all have to like, I think we need some real expert person to come on and be like, what's the state of RAM? Because I am, especially with these MacBooks, I'm always like, my default is like more, just always more. But I think it's an old school way of thinking. It's like, is 18 on one of these like getting 32 on Intel?
Well, or you know, the browsers are coming for your 18. So
it doesn't matter. Google, maybe that's what Microsoft, or that's the deal they have, is like, we give you $18 billion, but you need, when we ship Chrome, we need you to make sure that these things are packed full of RAM. We got people out there with like 7,000 tabs open, and if
wait, I thought you said Chrome exists to serve Google, not to
maybe that's why Apple's like, listen, if you give us this money, we're going to make sure it runs just a little bit slower, and everyone needs a little extra RAM, and then you know what, we can make it 20 billion next year.
Yes.
So
Chrome exists to sell RAM.
I actually did think, though, one of the more interesting things about it that was kind of cool was there's this behind the scenes about how they filmed it, and they filmed everything in that video was filmed with an iPhone 15 camera, which I thought was like really cool. And they showed how it did it. Now they have the huge rig, so they have the huge lighting and all this, but all the, if you will, the video itself was captured with the iPhone 15. And I was like, that's pretty impressive, that the fact that you can make essentially like a feature, I guess it was like 30-minute film, and they were doing everything. They were basically having it automatically streamed to like hard drives, and I don't know, this is just like, wow. So it's like, I don't know, it's always interesting. Sometimes you wonder, like, it's like Apple and podcasts. They seem to just never care about podcasts. No one cares about updating that app. When they do, it's always like a bunch of like random things they forget. But when it comes to like cameras and making movies, they have the full attention of the Apple team. They are definitely producing some good stuff. So if you want something fun to watch, check out the Apple stuff. And then, you know, we'll check in next year. Maybe it'll be the M4 where Matt Ray's actually moved to go get.
I'm happy with what I got, my M1 Air. And so, probably at some point it'll die or be unsupported, and it'll be time to upgrade.
Well, truth be told, I'm still rocking the Intel Mac Mini that I've had for several years. It's sitting right here, and I have like an M1 like MacBook but I end up using this most of the time. So it's like, but it's got 32 gigs of RAM. So, you know, I don't know. I guess I'm okay. I guess it's gonna work out.
You'll be fine.
Who knows? All right. Well, listen, a couple other things about listener feedback. One, I want to let you know I sent some stickers to Todd in Oregon. If you would like some stickers, all you have to do is send your postal address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com. I'll be happy to send you a sticker anywhere in the world. Next week, KubeCon, right? And there are a lot of people going to be at KubeCon that listen to the show. There's a whole Slack channel you can get in there. One thing that jumped out, I think Sudesh from Akamai, he's hosting a happy hour at KubeCon. So you can, looks like you can register. I don't know if you get to Johnny Lee Gen yourself. I have no details. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I bet you if you sign up and you just go have fun, you know, maybe you'll see Matt Ray there, probably get some free food, maybe some free drinks. If you don't like the event, don't email me, email Sudesh. I don't have no idea. There's a bunch of those, and there are more people posting various happy hours. We already mentioned Matt will be there. A bunch of other listeners will be there. So, you know, everyone find somebody. Most importantly, everyone there that's listening to this, just recommend the podcast. That's your only mission. Just recommend the podcast to us.
I'm flying to Chicago to recommend.
Are you giving us stickers? You got some stickers still? Or do I need to like refill you?
I probably need to get a refill. I think I'll have a handful. So if you show up,
all right. Our mission is to make sure Matt Ray runs out of stickers at KubeCon, and then I'll send him some more. So that's always fun for me. Also, we also had some Excel follow up from Professor Jeremy.
So good.
That I think he's going to be at the show. So we talked about Excel last week and all the crazy things that were going on in the scientific community. So here's some updates. So first, the setting to not convert text to date has existed for at least a year, but more options were added recently. It is per user, not within the file. So it's sort of, it works by setting the cell format to text. So a user who doesn't have the latest Excel won't break everyone else. They just shouldn't be the one to import data. So yeah, so you're saying, very important, if you are the scientist that is too lazy or doesn't have money or doesn't upgrade Excel, you can't import the data. You are off that list, right? That's most important.
So
Uh,
they've already sold one upgrade somewhere.
yeah, so one person in the science lab has to upgrade, right? And then they're the only one that can do the import. And then he also mentions that there is an issue that we talked about last week, that you can't use macros during execution. So basically, there are still lots of ways that you can, if you will, hurt yourself with Excel. So anyway, appreciate all the feedback from Professor Jeremy. Go find him. He'll be at KubeCon next week as well. And then conferences. So we already kind of mentioned it. KubeCon, that's November 6th through the 9th. Matt will be there. We do have a discount code. It's a really long VMware discount code that's in the show notes that you can see. If you are in Europe, you can visit Cote. He'll be at the VMware Explore event that's in Barcelona. And then November 7th and 8th, there's going to be the RISC-V Summit. Maybe they'll figure out if we should buy more RAM for our, our laptops. That'd be a good tidbit we need to know. And then our friends over at the VAT conference, they're coming back to Texas, and that's going to be January 29th through February 1st. And of course, if you want a conference mentioned, all you got to do is really probably log into the Slack, let me know what you're doing. We can probably put it up here and advertise it for you, or you want to send me an email. We're always happy to do something like that. Do some type of media sponsorship. That's always fun. Now, having said all that, Matt, what's your recommendation this week?
I don't have a recommendation. I have an anti-recommendation.
Oh, even better. I always like this little Matt Ray rant.
Well, I on a previous episode, I spilled orange juice on my keyboard,
which resulted in some fantastic screen grabs by the community.
Yes, and so that day, I panic bought a Lenovo Go wireless ergonomic keyboard, but I rinsed out that Microsoft keyboard, and eventually it came back for
it did.
I don't know 2 months. Was that probably about 2 months ago?
Yeah.
And so I was using it, and then it just finally just totally died. Just nothing. No lights, no batteries. Just no response. So I'm like, all right, well, it finally died. Let me go back to that Lenovo keyboard that I bought, and it's terrible.
Really?
Yeah,
what's wrong with it? The key sticky.
The key feel is too soft and not sensitive enough, or I don't know. Like a lot of times I'm typing and things get out of order. And I feel like a lag on the screen, and I think it's just
It's bad for a keyboard.
The firmware on it is too slow. I'm not a fast typist. I'm 60 words a minute. Something like that. It can't keep up with my typing, or it's bizarre, and I don't know why that is. But
so where are you at? Are you retiring it? What's happening?
Well,
What's your what are you
I'm going to KubeCon in 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to be ordering a replacement. Maybe we'll talk about it on a future episode. So I don't want to give anything away.
Do they still sell your beloved Microsoft keyboard here in the US?
No.
Can we get you one?
No, it's gone.
gone.
I checked Best Buy, I checked Amazon, I checked the Microsoft Store. You can find them, but they're severely marked up, or used. And
I don't know. It sounds like they're priced fairly given your desperation. I think it's I don't
know. No. I mean, I'm ready to move forward. When I bought this Lenovo keyboard, they still had the sculpts in stock. I mean, because they stopped making them about 6 months ago. And so the stock has just been bleeding out. And so I could have got like the business edition with the mouse or something. I should have bought that. But now it's gone. That's gone. They're all gone. In both countries, and so
you seem
I'm looking.
Like the person that would build your own keyboard. Like you seem like you order the switches and the whole thing. Like it feels like this is a Matt Ray project. We need to get you going on.
So if I had access to knowing the difference between all the switches, so you go and you look at these fancy keyboard sites. Right. And they're like, oh, it's got such and such kind of switch. I'm
the
like,
blue switch or the brown switch or the
or literally, I'm looking at the site and they have 20 different switches.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I have no idea. I don't even know how to describe what I like.
JJ doesn't know SSH JJ. Isn't he like down this rabbit hole? It feels like he's
probably
like sure he's got it going.
Yeah, but my point is like if I would if I knew what I wanted. You know, if I sat down and you're like, type on this, now type on this, better or worse, just, and I could probably do an optometrist style path to finding the right touch of keyboard that I like.
Uh-huh.
So instead, I'm probably going to buy something replaceable, something serviceable where I could change them out if I found something I like better. But everything I've found so far suggests that, like, oh, the default is pretty good. So I think I'm going to end up buying like a premium keyboard with the defaults.
All right. Well, I'm looking down here. I'm rocking the Apple default keyboard, Bluetooth keyboard.
Well, and that's what's funny is I'm like, typing on my laptop, keyboard. I'm like, this feels fine. It's like I'm pretty much okay with the feel of it. This Lenovo one is just trash. It feels bad.
I guess maybe you should try the new Apple keyboard with the Touch ID. That way you can like log
but
in.
also I need an ergonomic. I do need an ergonomic, which narrows the window.
All right. Well, we'll give people one recommendation that came in here from the chat. It's the Kinesis RGB gaming split keyboard. Great ergonomics. But Matt, hold your fire, Matt. So everyone, this is our big cliffhanger episode. Tune in next week or a coming episode where Matt Ray reveals what keyboard he has decided to purchase. Matt, don't say it now.
And I can continue my rant because this rant could go on.
And really what I was going to say is like that this could be a cliffhanger that lasts probably like 10 to 15 more episodes where every week it's just you complaining about a new keyboard. And then at the very end, you're just like, I don't know. I'm just using the Apple, right? That it could go that way, or it could.
That is definitely already part of the rant.
It could be, or our hero could find the perfect keyboard along the way. So, all right. Well, my recommendation this week is something very simple. I've been watching the series Bodies on Netflix. So I'm just giving this, I'm going to call this the exercise bike series. Like I just wanted something to watch while I was riding an exercise bike, trying to get some exercise, obviously. So Bodies, I think it was like 7 or 8 episodes. It's a little sci-fi kind of mystery thriller. I just thought it was solid. It was like, if something's great, if you just kind of want something that's like, you kind of have to pay attention to it. So you can't really be on your phone, but it's also kind of, if you will, maybe not the perfect series, but it's just a nice, if you will, time filler. So if you're looking for something on your exercise bike, or if you're flying to KubeCon and you have, I don't know, Matt, what do you have, 25 hours per leg?
I already know what I'm watching.
Like that.
Yeah.
Then if you got something like that, and you're just like, I need some more filler, then, go with Bodies. Check it out on Netflix. All right. And with that, listen, make sure everyone go visit Matt Ray next week at KubeCon. You have plenty of things to ask him about. You should take your keyboard recommendation to Matt Ray and have him reject it right in front of your face for some esoteric reason. That'll be a lot of fun for you. And with that, and also too, we should also ask all the crowd is like, if you have keyboard recommendations, either go into the Slack and make them, or send us an email. And maybe we can, if you will, do a little roundup, like the most popular keyboard used by the Software Defined Talk community. And with that, we will talk to you next week.
Bye.
All right. Thanks for everyone hanging in on the stream. I don't know. Oh, that's what it was. Cherry blue switches. I had my switch terminology wrong. Yeah,
and I just looked up
from Cherry, right? Isn't that the manufacturer, Cherry? I think
that's one of them. There's multiple ones.
Oh, I look forward to this, Matt. You're really about to go down.
I'm running down the rabbit hole. Yes.
Yeah.
But the problem is, like, I have my keyboard IO that I can go and I can poke the buttons and I can be like, so that's what that feels like.
What is this one that Graham? I have to hold on. I'm not in the chat here. What is did you click on this one? Amazon? What was your here for the streamers? Why don't you like that one? We can do a little return.
Wait, the keyboard IO? Wait,
I'm trying to look at the one he gave us.
Oh, it's a comparison tool.
All right,
sample tester. That's funky.
All right, good job, Graham. I think you've given Matt Ray a lot of recommendations here. He's going to be good. All right, Brian, good to see Brian on there. Appreciate you hanging in there. Oh, a little Matt Ray time. Haven't seen the Nightbot in a while, and of course, Systems Guy. So, all right, everyone. Next week, I don't know. Next week's still up in the air. I'm not sure exactly when we're going to record. We've got a lot of people traveling, but we'll figure it out. And until then, everyone, be safe, and we'll talk to you next time.